This is the Power Producers Podcast, where we are refining and redefining the sales game.
Rule number one is you have to believe in yourself. You're the only one who doesn't think you belong in this appointment. The prospect has already validated your existence by scheduling time with you. Get it through your head you belong here, go in there, crush it, and close the deal.
A place where sales professionals can come to learn from other sales professionals and thought leaders that have mastered their craft.
The difference between a good salesperson and a best-in-class salesperson is only 2 minutes. By spending an extra 2 minutes on what you might think is a mundane task in the sales game, you separate yourselves from the pack, you grow your book of business, you close more deals, and you retain your accounts.
As well as their peers who are still striving for perfection to achieve their why.
I have a wife and 4 kids. Failure is not an option.
Real sales professionals, real stories, real results.
It's no different than being a professional baseball player. You can't be a one-trick pony. You have to be a 5-tool player in order to succeed in this game.
This is the Power Producers Podcast, production redefined. Are you ready to feel the power?
Hey everybody, welcome to the Power Producers Podcast, where we are refining and redefining the sales game. Today, from the great state of North Carolina, we have Mr. Harrison Wicker from the insurance people of North Carolina. What's going on, Harrison?
Hey, it's going pretty good for a Monday. How's it going, David?
It's been a challenging Monday, as we've already discussed. I mean, I don't know how it gets any more challenging than auto owners' systems being completely down. I can't log on to their website, their phone system, nothing, and I'm trying to deal with a bit of a claims situation for one of my clients.
Missed that part. I knew about all our other challenges of the day so far, but little cherry on top there.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah, carriers really love to rock your world, man. Especially on a Monday. If they can get kick-started for you, it's always a fun week.
Yep, absolutely. So Harrison, talk a little bit about where you came from and sort of how you got into the role that you're in now.
Yeah, so I think like a lot of young producers, fell into insurance accidentally. Never considered it as a career. I was 18, started college, and was going to get my marketing strategy degree, to end up really just digging in for a large company in the Triangle and here in North Carolina, where I met a life insurance IMO in Raleigh. And dug in from a marketing standpoint, helping agents learn about the industry. And from the beginning of that process, it was never really a end career for me. It was more of just putting it on my paper so I could move on to the next big thing after college. And once I really dove into the industry more and more, realized I loved working with agents, but I noticed a lot of agents never had the processes in place to really succeed. I think that's why you see a lot bow out within their first 2 years. So, getting that start and that headwind from, the agent perspective was really big, learning from the guys who have made it. I did that for going on 3 to 4 years, where I took over book of business for the P&C guy at that same IMO. So they had a arm of the IMO that, wrote some P&C business for the agents they worked with, as well as, just local, just digging in with, home auto excess market. I really enjoyed working with the business owner side. It's a different challenge. I think, life insurance is, it's kind of a numbers game. And I'm really a guy, I dig into preparation. I really like to challenge, and every account is different. So for me, getting into that, starting with a book of business, it was small, $50,000. Really had to grit my teeth and work at it. I was 22 at the time, had just graduated college, and really wanted to get after it, make a name for myself in a sales business. My dad had worked in management in the oil industry for 20, 25 years. He's still doing it. And for me, that was kind of always where I wanted to end up. But I never realized until I started growing my own book of business in the property and casualty world, how much I loved it, and B, how much of an impact you can make coming in on these accounts. And, being 22, 23 at the time, people look at you a little differently. But if you come in with the right strategies and, the right people in place around you, you're starting on level ground with the other agent, which is cool.
Yeah. So what would you say the biggest thing is you've learned moving into the PNC world from where you started out?
Yeah, I think, you just have to refine what you're looking for, what your ideal client is, not chasing it. I dug around in the excess market a lot, non-standard, would really hit anything under the sun. If it came my way, I'd ride it. And for me, I think I just had to refine my process and get to the point where I had to learn how to say no. Ideal clients, weren't going to fall in your lap. You had to chase it. But getting after every business was not something that was sustainable in the long run from a revenue standpoint. Yeah.
What's the ideal client look like for you now?
Yeah, I love middle market workers' comp. So my agency writes a lot of $5,000 to $10,000, $15,000 accounts, but I like anything around the $50,000 to $100,000 mark. For me, I actually just refined my business. So about 6 weeks ago, I made a change where 100% of my prospecting is done just based off of workers' comp, which I think is really, pushing me to have a better 2021 than I've had. And I like all the data that you can see on a prospect beforehand. Coming in, I'm a guy who I'm early to every meeting. I like being over-prepared, even if they don't know it, because I can ask those questions. I can steer everything in the direction that I want. And so for me, we work in about 12 verticals. So if it falls outside of that, I'm saying no, I'm passing it off, and I'm not wasting my time on it.
Nice.
Yeah, so I remember from talking to you the one time you and I talked on the phone a few months back that you do a lot of churches and schools and things like that. What are some of the other verticals you guys are playing in?
Yeah, so we insurance people, and this is a large part of the reason why I joined the cast here is they're really big into breweries and distilleries, schools. We're the number one in the Carolinas for both of those. We have more than 150 charter schools that we work with. And, for me, a lot of companies can go after contractors and stuff like that. But I like to have a little bit more fun with the verticals I work with. One of my verticals is soccer. I'm a big Arsenal fan, Premier League. And so for me, some of my passions really involve some of those verticals, manufacturing, different things like that. Yeah.
What's the soccer vertical? How's that work?
Yeah, so we write a lot of smaller nonprofit soccer youth clubs. And at the end of the day, they're connected with a lot of manufacturers, a lot of different soccer press companies, make different equipment and stuff like that. And so at the end of the day, that's my target market. So I write a lot of these nonprofit accounts to try to break into that segment since they're so very well connected and don't really work outside that industry. It's been a slow moving process, but yeah, it's definitely a lot of fun.
Cool deal. So you like to play in middle market workers comp. We don't know anything at all about that. So why don't you walk us through a little bit about what you're doing to open opportunities for yourself without giving away the secret sauce?
Yeah, for me, and I'm an open book. I tell people this all the time. Since I'm only 26 now, so I've been in insurance 7 years. But for me, I redefine the process to build advisory boards around my network for the different verticals I work in. And that's kind of the avenue how I break into these accounts. Since I don't have the strong book of business referral partnership that some of these agents have had for a number of years, I build myself a program that is the best of the best. It includes bankers, CPAs, that are all very one-dimensional. They only write one book of business, whether it's, dentists, it's going to be manufacturers, breweries as well. And so that's kind of been the greatest strength, I think, for me is coming into an account, being able to know more about them from other industry experts and having that insight, on similar accounts that they write as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think for us, one of the reasons why we like comp is exactly what you said. There's a lot of data that's available to you in the open market without having to engage with the client to ask a ton of questions on the front end. And what I like about it is, especially when we're doing things in terms of the experience mod, it's very difficult for a prospect to argue with you about the results of a mod analysis because it's their numbers, right?
Yeah.
I mean,
it's not a hypothetical, like if this happens, if this doesn't happen. It's like, this is what it is.
right.
Yeah.
And so, it's always funny to me because we lead with the mod for that reason, for the fact that it's able to be, we can run through a mod analysis relatively quickly, glean some good information, validate that the mod's right, and then begin to break it out into, more specific information, whether it be by location, so that you can hold individual units responsible for their performance regarding increase in mod points as a result of claims under that manager's watch, or even if we get into the conversation regarding indirect cost of claims and all of the stuff associated with that, I mean, it always cracks me up when we go in. I mean, we've probably said it 100 times on the podcast. According to the Bureau of Labor Statistics, the indirect cost associated with a comp claim across general industries anywhere between 2 and 20 times the direct cost. So we always use 2. Like, you can't argue if we're using 2. If you've got an experience mod that's 2.23 and I'm using a 2x multiplier for indirect costs, I'm doing you a favor. Your indirect costs are actually probably much higher than that. And most of the time, people want to, they scratch and they claw and they fight back. And my response is always the same. Hey, look, you're right. It's probably not 2x. That's what best in class companies have. You need to understand that you're presenting an argument to me, and what you're asking me to accept is that you have an experience mod that's F double minus at 2.23, but somehow you've managed to crack the nut and become best in class at the containment of soft costs on workers' compensation claims. That's what you're asking me to believe. And that's usually, if I have to get to that point and be that abrupt in the conversation, that's when the light bulb goes off. Right. Some people will never get it, right? Some people are never going to understand. And again, agents are kind of on the fence too. Some people will tell you should throw soft costs and total cost of risk. Some people don't. I happen to believe you should throw them in there as long as you're using a consistent multiplier every time. As long as I'm using 2x every single time, I don't think that that's an issue. I'm going to use it across the board for everybody. I'm going to tell them what the number is and why we use it. Based on where that came from, that's credible enough information. I think it's safe to throw it in there. But there's a lot of times that people just have never even had that conversation. When you've gone in, what would you say one of the most creative approaches is that you've used to get somebody's attention in order to even have that conversation about what you guys can do?
I like coming in from the lowest possible mod standpoint. You're asking that question from the gate. Hey, do you know what your lowest possible mod is? And oftentimes, if they've got an experience mod, you're going to get a kickback. If you ask that question, they're not giving you a kickback based on, hey, I'm set, I'm okay in my program. They're going to be like, hey, I don't know what that is. And you show them a roadmap to success from the gate with other industry verticals, that you've worked with. I actually had a pest control company, largest in the state, and he kept giving me the kickback on their experience mod history, and we're all set. 15 straight years of having a mod over 1.5, and they're on the verge of having a number of carriers just not even look at them because they have no processes in place to really be sustainable long term. They're $150,000, $160,000 account, which isn't that big for the size that they are. But when we start talking about that lowest possible mod and showing them that roadmap, you're really driving down, hey, here's how much you're paying compared to your industry peers. And I like leading with an industry article or something related to safety that is generally the number one driving point on injuries. So I give them some kind of actionable advice where, hey, if you're not doing this, this is what you need to look out for. And that's generally how I get that first meeting.
How can your response of "I'm all set" make any sense if you've had a mod over 1.5 for 15 years? That's ridiculous.
It's one of those things, man. Business owners, they get into the process of bidding and quoting every year, so they don't think anything of it. They'll send it out to market, and it's just in their head that, hey, we're getting 90 days out, we're going to shop it. It's all fine because it's been fine the last 15 years. But they've never had someone take the time to talk to them about, hey, this is where you're at. If your injuries keep at this point, it's only going higher.
Yeah, I mean, the fact of the matter is they're paying 50% of what an average operator in their industry is doing. They're not even at their minimum mod or lowest possible mod when you're using that. So, I mean, that's one of the things when we start hitting with what the 2 no's, 2 yes that we're using for booked appointments, that's immediately where we start, right? Yeah. So they can't say, no, we're all set. If they do, they're an idiot and they don't need to be our client anyhow. But I mean, we lead the conversation with, hey, just out of curiosity, I know you weren't expecting my call. I apologize. I've only got a minute myself, so I promise I'm going to be brief. But I do have a question. Are you happy with the fact you're paying at least 55% more than the average peer in your industry for your workers' comp?
Right.
What are you going to do? Say, yeah? Yeah, exactly. I'm happy. I'm good. We've been good for 15. We don't mind paying the 55% above average surcharge. That's how we roll, right? It's not like you're getting any bells and whistles on your comp policy for that. It's punitive. And then we follow that up with, over the course of the last 3 or 4 years, has anybody come in and done a comprehensive experience mod audit for you on your workers' comp? And guess what? The answer is no again. So the follow-up is, well, since you're paying at least 55% more than your peer group, and since no one has come in to audit your mod to even make sure that it's accurate, let alone tell you what your minimum mod is, wouldn't you agree that it makes sense for us to spend 20, 30 minutes talking about how we can do that and make it as painless as possible for you? You can't answer the first 2 questions no and not answer the first question yes.
Right.
And that's directly out of Never Split the Difference by Chris Voss. The human brain subconsciously.
Probably a pretty cool book.
Yeah, if you ever get one sent to you. The human brain subconsciously feels in control when they say the word no. Doesn't matter if it's a hard no or if it's just a no, tell me more, or a no, not right now, or whatever else. So we've taken the stance that we want to completely flip the script on the phones and go to 2 no's, a no to a yes, or 2. If you can get 2 no's to a yes, it's even better. And you book way more appointments that way. It's a complete paradigm shift in terms of what you think. So anytime you ask the question, that's what we've basically done it. We talk to all the people that are in Killing Commercial about the same thing. Think about the question you would normally ask, and then go back and change how you would ask that question to get them to answer it in a way that they say no.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if you were to say, are you aware that you're paying 55% more? That's not going to get you the same answer because you don't have the psychology or the emotion attached. These are business owners.
And plus, it's also easier for them at that point to just be like, yeah, me and my agent have talked about it. We're putting something together to fix him. Like that just allows them to feed you a line of BS, like right there.
Right. Yeah. That's why I think that you have to ask them, does it make you happy? And let them know, look, you suck 55% worse than your competition, than your average competitor does.
Are you happy that you're a loser?
Yeah. Then depending on the premium volume, I mean, if that accounts $150,000, but that's with a $55,000 mod. So it's a hair less than $100,000 in manual premium for the most part. Something that size, minimum mod, I don't know. You would know because you did the mod analysis on it, I'm sure. But I would imagine it would come in the low 0.8s, high 0.7s.
Yeah, it was a 0.81.
Yeah, that's what I figured. It would. I was going to say like 0.82. If I'm being completely transparent, I'm not going to pretend like I win the prize for guessing it on the money. But I figured it would be like in anywhere between a 0.78 and a 0.82 is where I figured it would fall.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's one of those things too, like that's why I love having the conversation, the initial prospecting conversation with the CFO, because generally you're going to get those no's a lot easier because their end goal is to save the company money. They're looking for a difference between, what they paid last year and what they paid this year. And they want to see that workable for the next 3 years. That's why, being able to come in from the gate and saying, hey, let's put in a 3-year plan to get you to that mod, I think is huge.
Yeah, absolutely. So when you go in, what's that engagement look like? I mean, how are you prospecting? Are you prospecting around renewal? Are you prospecting well before renewal? I mean, I know that you're associated with BIGN in your agency, so I know some of how Scott teaches because the agency I was at prior, we were in BIGN. So are you following that roadmap?
Yeah, I'm following it to a T. I do like coming in before renewal, but on the larger accounts, if you're looking in excess of $100,000 in premium for workers' comp, I found greater success coming in after renewal because they're going to have had challenges during that renewal process. You likely already have an idea of what those challenges are. So you can just say, hey, this are the steps we would have taken if we were your agent. Here's the steps to get to the next renewal. And then you can sign I don't even go after the agent of record letter at that point. I go after a fee. Here's what you need to pay me to get to the point where you need to be next year. Your agent's getting paid. Let him do some of the work and see how that works out for you. But, if you really want to see, gold at the end of the year, then, hire me. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that's one of the things that we've been able to do here is we'll go after, we give them the option of charging them a fee up front, but most of the time that's a fallback position because what we're really trying to do is find money through an aggravated inequity on a mod error or a jacked up audit or something, and then recover that money and do a revenue split on the found money because it's a whole lot easier for me to tell a CFO, hey, I'm going to find you some money. You wouldn't have it if it wasn't for me. Are you willing to split that 50-50 with me on the recovery? And if the answer is no, well, then what would you be willing to split? And if the answer is nothing, then the answer is, okay, well, then you're going to get 100% of the money that you have right now, right? Which is none. I'm not going to do the work product for you. But, I don't know that I've ever had anybody. I think the worst case scenario is somebody told me, no, we won't split it 50-50. We'll split it 70-30. We'll keep 70 and we'll give you 30. Well, the numbers made sense. So that deal worked. Now I'm not arguing to get another line item on an income statement on the expense line. I'm just finding new money and taking some of that. It's a harder conversation. I mean, I'm not saying that it's impossible. Obviously, if you're doing it, it works. And it's worked for me before. But I always like to try and not have them try and go and get extra funds for the risk management budget, because those are already tough to come by to begin with.
So we go through that auditing process a little differently, and this helps with that fee. We go in from a 10% split standpoint. So we let them keep the 90 and then roll it over into that fee. So we're seeing, not everything up front. We allow them to kind of roll it over, and we get assigned AOR here. We're going to work for you until we get that book of business. This fee is going to come in place until that happens.
Yeah, and I've done that as well, where we'll go in and maybe start doing some work and tell them, here's what the fee is, but here's where you recover it back. When we go place your insurance, we're going to place your insurance net of commissions. So even though you're giving me some cash flow right now to fund what we're going to do to help you, your renewal will drop by that percentage that you were paying me, and my fee is going to remain flat over the course of the year anyhow. I just like I like going after the 50% because that way I get my money all in one chunk for starters.
Yeah, and it's money already spent, so they're happy if they
they don't even know it. They don't even know they're missing it.
Found money.
Yeah.
And so that's that piece of it. So typically, like, you go in, you're gonna get if you had the best time to get in front of an account, let's just call it a $150,000 workers' comp account, maybe the whole package, whole insurance programs between $200 and $250. When are you going in?
I'm generally going in 120, 150 days out, and I'm doing a prospect one-on-one, generally about that 120 mark, because I see a lot of agents start picking up the phone and calling as soon as it hits 90 days. I want to be ahead of that window. And I want to help them project their mod ahead of that window as well that their broker's not even talking about, because then they'll already see some kind of value in working with me that their broker hasn't instilled, in them yet. And I see a lot of guys drop the ball too. They let it get down on those big accounts until 60, 45 days. And, carriers, we like to come in with a full comprehensive, underwriting package. So we'll do employee interviews. We'll do some stuff on the back end that we don't always tell all the carriers to get a better idea of how we're going to set them up for success in our workers' comp program and get them to buy into that.
So you said something interesting, and I'm going to be devil's advocate here, but maybe not really. I'm just going to ask a question around it. You say you do things that you don't necessarily tell the carriers. I'm interested in what that looks like, number one, and then tell me what more, flesh that out a little bit, and then I'm going to share my 2 cents with you because I think that you and I think the same way on this.
Yeah, so, the process is, the carriers are more interested in what's on paper, the injuries, they're more data driven. So they want to see that and they're going to look at patterns and whatnot. We're also looking at those patterns, but we're trying to figure out, a broader scope and get kind of to the underlying issues of their workers' comp program. So we're asking questions from everything from the C-suite all the way down to, new hires and just trying to figure out, what their hiring process looks like. Things that are going to not necessarily encourage injuries, but are going to set the current program up for not having success with when we take it over. So a lot of those interviews, a lot of those questions that we ask them are not going to be given. We're going to be kept, private for our agency, but we build our work comp program and our process out based on those answers. And it's pretty open-ended. We've got, depending on the vertical, we've got it set up to where we have specific questions we ask, but we kind of just let them run with it. Because I think when you get to the bottom line, they're happy to share that once you start breaking down those walls. And you get more depth out of the questions that you don't even ask, that they start answering.
Yeah. So I think part of it too is one of the things that you have to do, and this is my opinion, and I'm always looking at things from a cultural perspective and what I can do to get myself ingrained into that company as quickly as possible, right? And so when you talk about, when I talk about things that I'm doing that the carrier, that I don't necessarily convey to the carriers, one of the things that and look, I'm sure that carrier reps that are listening to this are going to send me hate mail. Honestly, don't really care. Don't really care if you don't like what I'm getting ready to say or not. It's really none of your business, and I'm not going to stop. When I engage with a prospect, I sit down and say, look, I'm not a licensed attorney, but the easiest way for me to explain what our relationship is you have attorney-client privilege with me. Nothing you say leaves this room. Nothing you say 100%. Will ever be used against you. I need you to be as honest and forthright with me as you can. Kyle has heard me say this, and people still lie.
Right.
Yeah.
We had an account last year. I would like to punt this guy right in the freaking scrotum for what he did to us. I mean, we went around and around and around. He was adamant that they did not have a confined space entry issue in this particular company that did septic work. And we said, we're going to have to exclude it. We talked the carrier into doing it.
Mind you, this dude has been with the company for 25 years. So there's no way. Sorry, continue.
Yeah. And so basically, long story short, the dude lied to us, right? So I don't get it. Apparently I wasn't good at bringing him over to our side. But on the flip side, there's been almost every time in my career that I've had that conversation that you build rapport very quickly with whoever it is you're talking to. And over time, in a much quicker time, rather, you have the ability to gain trust from that person because they see, okay, this guy's legit. He's actually not going in ratting me out or whatever. At the end of the day, the carrier can use the data to figure out what's going on. I want to be able to have them realize that I want to get unlimited access to their operation, to touch and feel every piece and part of it that I need to, so that I can go, not just get them the best insurance deal, but craft the best overall strategy to fix their issues going forward. And I think that's one of the places where I don't think agents do a good job of drilling down deep enough. I really don't. I think that they pretty much take things at face value. They're looking for exposure data. They're not looking for underlying issues that are really driving the cost of premium. And so as long as they get the loss runs and the projected sales and payrolls and everything else, they're out. We're good. We don't need to do any more than this.
At the end of the day, too, it's too expensive from the carrier to go into that. And they've got all the underwriting data that they need from, working in those industries that they don't need to. But I think for us as agents, building a successful program, the devil's in the details. So you really have to, dig in and get them to buy in to your process. And that's being trusted from the gate. Listen,
if I have an account that has hair on it, which the majority of them that we go after have some level of hair on them, otherwise we wouldn't be talking to them, we're going to do the mod analysis, and that becomes a material part of the submission. We're going to do a loss control visit. If it's something that I don't feel comfortable doing myself, I'm going to hire a third-party loss control person that's got expertise in that industry, and I have a relationship with them to go in and do the baseline risk assessments that we do on the front end of these deals. And that could be anywhere from a 30 to 50-page report. And guess what? That's going to the carrier as well, because the fact is, as long as you disclose all of this stuff to them, the carrier already knows that it's happening. Half of it has to do with whether or not the agent's being honest.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. And I work quite a bit in the assigned risk space too, here in the Carolinas. So I'm working with accounts in excess of $15,000 in premium on the voluntary side that for whatever reason got kicked out, whether their broker didn't have the markets or they had some type of risk in their program that voluntary markets just didn't want to touch. So when you work with those, and a lot of them end up being larger nonprofits that don't realize they're paying 2 to 3 times and they have other options. So at the end of the day, you've got to make it financially feasible for them to get out of it. And the details are what's going to get you there. If they're not disclosing things, there's no chance that the carrier is going to take it. When they see the underwriter already sees that there's hair on it, they know it from either past submission or details on reviewing the account with someone else.
Well, most of these carriers are going to do their own, risk evaluation anyway. So it's not like they're not going to find out. But if you can get out ahead of it and say, all right, here's the things that we found on our end. Here's what we're comfortable with, what we're not comfortable with, and what we think that we can improve on or put in, X policy to help them out here. I mean, that makes your case stronger and makes it more palatable for some of the carriers.
Yeah, honesty is key from the gate. If you don't disclose something and they find out through the underwriting process, that's going to be a bad look for not only your agency, but to submission in general. And that's put up red flags for some of the companies that I want in my preferred markets that I've actually been able to look at. I've had carriers decline based on previous submissions from other agents because they didn't disclose something. The carrier won't even look at it for another 5 years. So it's interesting how those details can hurt the client down the road and you don't even know it.
Right.
Yeah, I think from our perspective, it'll never be the carrier. The embarrassment isn't the carrier finding something we didn't disclose to them. It's usually we've gone to bat for somebody and then we find it prior.
Yeah. Yeah, I wholeheartedly agree with that. It's because it's a long process. Workers' comp is something that I think more recently a lot of agents are getting into. But a lot of people shied away because of the commission levels, because of the time spent on it. But for me, I love a challenge. And when you go to bat, which, every workers' comp, prospect, you have to go to bat for him, especially when you're working in the middle market, because the carrier underwriters, if you're going to have a competitive program and a strong program, they need the details, but you want to set them up for success over, a period of time, and that's the long run.
Well, the other thing too is it's different in North Carolina, at least if you're inland, than what it is if you're in a coastal state too, right? So for us, yeah, you might be in a position where a comp carrier is paying lower commission, or you could be in a position like we are right now, where one of our main carriers is paying like 17 points on new business through the end of the year. So that's better than half the package markets we have.
Yeah.
But, I've never looked at it that way, because the way that I came up in this industry, we always had issues getting property capacity. So it was just understood that if you want property, you got to give me the whole enchilada. You got to give me all of the workers' comp, the GL, the auto, umbrella, everything, or I'm not going to give you property capacity. And so that's how underwriters have leveraged it. So I've just never really piecemealed stuff together. I've got one account in my book of business that I only write workers' comp on. Out of all of my accounts, I have one, and there's a reason for it, because the other lines are in a captive that is specific to that industry, and it makes all the sense in the world for them to be there.
Yeah, we've got one like that on our books where the rest of their package is in a captive program. But for me, I've got some companies that I only do the workers' comp for, and I won't touch anything else just because they're either not going to be competitive for me, or from a revenue standpoint, it just doesn't make sense to move them from where they are.
Yeah, no, I think you gain a lot of ground there too. One of the things I like to do, so I'm with you in getting in where I'm sort of torn in this, because this is something we've been tossing around back and forth in discussion for about the last month or two now, because we're working on building a mousetrap, for lack of a better term, a business development thing. I like going in a month after renewal. I love going in a month after renewal. It is much more difficult to get in a month after renewal, but if you can get in, you're going to close that account. I mean, it's literally almost impossible. You really have to do something stupid to not get that piece of business. And I like going in the month after renewal for a few reasons. The first one is that they really haven't put the renewal to bed for the year yet. They know they're still getting ready to deal with audit. So if they say, I'm done with insurance for this year, say, oh, do you already have your audit? And the answer is going to be no. Well, then they haven't put insurance to bed for the year yet. I also like it because if the renewal was bad, then, that's still going to be fresh on their mind. And I also like it because they don't have to go to their agent to get loss runs. They've probably still got them from the renewal that they went through. Right. So I can go get the data that I need, and it'll be credible enough for me to do the analysis that I need to do to then go in and present our findings. See, when we go in and engage with somebody, our first goal is just to get some information, get them to agree to let us do a mod on it. Yeah. I'm not trying to close business on the first deal. I think a lot of people are under the impression when we talk about, the meeting that we're going to go for the AOR, it's never that first meeting. I mean, it would be really out of the ordinary for us to go after an AOR on meeting number one. I mean, we'd have to pull in the place would have to be basically the comp program would have to be burning down and they're begging for help.
Right.
So all we're trying to do is say, hey, look, we want to do the audit. We want to run this thing through Magic. We want to make sure that we come back and give you the reports that we can show you your top loss drivers and frequency and severity, Then we go back and present that. And that's when we say, look, here's what your problems are. Here's how we fix those. And here's how you pay for us. If we can do that, number one, we have a much higher likelihood of getting found money if there's, aggravated inequities on the mod, or there's been bad audit advice given in the past, or bad audits that they just signed off on because nobody ever reviewed them on the agency side. I literally review every single audit for every single one of my clients. I don't ever tell my clients to pay an audit unless I've had the ability to run through it. And we end up disputing probably 95% of them. And guess what? We get money back on almost every single one of those, because what's happened is carriers have started outsourcing. I don't know how long it takes to get certified to be a workers' comp auditor, but I have a feeling it's probably a Saturday afternoon and about $99, and you have the ability to get your certificate to go do that. And I don't trust them. I don't think that their interests are aligned. Their goal is to pencil whip the audits, get them. Look, dude, we've had guys. You're one boy, man. Kyle watched me. I'm like, watch this guy, man. This audit will be over in 5 minutes. He'll come in as number one. take him a bottle of George Dickel when you go in. Right? But this guy, I said, watch what happens. I had my client had everything prepared. The dude came in. He's like, oh, man, I know you. This will be a good one. You got everything ready for me? I said, sure do. Boom, here it is. Handed it over to him with a nice, neat ribbon on top. Goes back, audits it, done. Everything's completely done, right? So rule number one, have everything ready.
Right.
Like, the worst audits that I've had to deal with are the people that are they're the people that are looking for certificates that, were procured during the audit period while the auditor's there. Like, they didn't do anything to prep for it ahead of time. So we walk all of our clients through everything they need to do to prep it. But, I love being able to help people get through the audit. What's better than getting into an account a month after renewal saying, hey, look, I'm happy to help you with your audit. Next thing you know, the guy that's from the outsourced audit place that likes George Dickel is the one who walks in. He knows you. You have everything ready to be, presented to him. He takes it. He doesn't even do the audit there. He takes it home and does the audit, and they get a favorable result. All of a sudden, you look like an absolute superstar after they went through a crappy renewal because you set everything up the right way. You greased the auditor. And I mean, that's the whole thing. One of the things that's coming out of this episode is the fact, people, you're learning where the sausage gets made. It's not always pristine, right? Like, there's things you have to do in this game to grease people and make things go the way you want them to go. We didn't do anything illegal or shady with the auditor. We just made sure everything was prepared. And that guy appreciates that based on the fact that every time he has an audit for one of our clients, it goes seamlessly. So I don't even have to
bottle of Dickel. So what else could you?
For the record, he never gets a bottle of Dickel. He never. That's an inside joke. I have never given an auditor any type of anything for considerations on an audit. But I will sit there and talk to them. I will sit there and build rapport with them because I have found that there are so many adversarial relationships with these auditors that if you take the time, most of them are reasonable people, right? So,
and like you alluded to earlier, most of the time we're going to dispute it anyways. So if we have to have that conversation, it kind of already makes it a little bit easier off the jump by doing that.
Yeah, and most of the time, if I say, look, if this thing's not right, we're going to dispute it. Let's see if we can't figure it out and make it right before you leave. And that's the other thing. Some of them are real sticklers, right? Some of them want to make sure, okay, I need to see all of the certificates of insurance. No, you don't. You can go to the Department of Financial Services website, and it will show you that workers' comp was in effect for these subcontractors we don't have certs for the entire time of the policy period. Quit busting my clients' chops over the fact that you need this, quote, documentation when you can go to public domain and get that information for free, and it proves the exact same thing you're trying to prove. This doesn't need to be adversarial. I mean, I've had auditors where I taught them that trick. They didn't even realize that they could just go to the DFS, pull it up, and if the policy canceled at any time, it's going to show the cancellation in there, and it's going to show the gap and everything else.
I would bet that there's a large number of auditors that don't know that. They're just box checking and going through, their list of stuff that they need to get, and that's it.
Yeah, they're human. I mean, they wouldn't be treated that way. So if you can come in and have a friendly conversation, at the end of the day, when you tell them they're wrong, they appreciate it at the end of the day, that you taught them something. And I think for a lot of auditors, if you're working with the same one on the same account every year, it's going to be a better relationship. We see something like 75% of audits that are wrong. So if you can come in and have a better process for that, it's smoother, not only for your client, but the auditor appreciates that a heck of a lot more.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. Loss control people are the same way. I'm probably not going to teach a loss control person anything because unless it's a card trick or something like that. But I mean, the truth is that's not how my brain's wired. I stink at loss control. If you want me to go in and be the person to point out all of the hazards and everything, I'm going to fail miserably in that role. I know how to do certain things. I know there are certain things that I'm looking for. Like if there are electrical cords that are Kyle can probably tell you all of my low hanging fruit. If you have air compressors and you don't have hose reels, retractable hose reels mounted from the ceiling so that the stays off of the floor for a trip hazard, I'm going to notice that. If you have a drill press and you don't have a wide base that's mounted to the floor so that the thing has the ability to tip over instead of being stable, I'm going to notice that. I'm going to look at the electrical panel. These are things that I figured out over the course of time from just simply going on loss control visits and paying attention. But my skill set is not to do that. And so I don't try to be what I'm not. What I would challenge agents to do is participate in that stuff. I think that so many times agents find out about loss control visit from the letter they get with the recommendations, and then it becomes a compliance piece. That could have been avoided if you made it a point to attend loss control visits for all of your clients. Walk around and look. You're going to learn things. If nothing else, you're investing your time as tuition to learn more and become more effective at the point of sale. That's it. I can pretend like I know a lot of stuff. I'm going to walk around with my cell phone and I'll video the things that I recognize, but I know where I'm weak. That's one of the places where I could be a lot better. I don't want to be. As long as I can hire somebody to do that does that for a living and is the best at that, that's who my clients deserve. They don't need somebody who's out there just trying to, be everything to everybody. It's just not going to happen.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So you go in, you diagnose the problem, you give them some information. What kind of resources are you guys using? Are you using, is it the BIGN stuff? And by the way, I love Scott. Scott Addis is he's the godfather, man. I mean, there's nothing negative you can say about that guy at all. And his process is sound and proven, for certain. So I think he's probably molded the outcomes of more insurance agents' careers than he'll ever realize, just from people who have 1 or 2 degrees removed from Scott been able to absorb some of the experiences that some of the people who are directly connected to him get. But are you using any kind of like a broker briefcase or anything like that when you're going in? Do you have access to that? What mod software are you guys using to do the mod audits?
Yeah. So, the big in process is kind of a game changer from a fundamental standpoint. For me, I never really had a mentor in the game until I joined Insurance People back in March. And so for me, laying down that groundwork as, early stages of COVID was important. But, I shy away from certain things in that process. For me, we actually do everything in-house from a mod standpoint. I think from, a book of business down the road, we're going to have to use some kind of software just from a producer standpoint. But it really drills my game and teaches me some new things, being able to do it in-house with Mitch Kaufman. He's a work comp master in the agency. And you get to see
you guys just doing it manually in a spreadsheet. I mean, that's the thing, man. I was telling one of the guys from one of the software companies that wanted to get in a pissing match with me one day, I hate to rain on your parade, but your product is not proprietary. The mod calculation is mathematics. So if I wanted to spend the money, I could just go hire a developer and have them build my own mod software.
Yeah.
If I felt froggy. So, I mean, it's not like it's horribly complicated to do if you know how to do it. And it only makes you stronger at the point of sale if you can, make sure that if you understand the pieces apart and parts, and even more so, if you're able to take those and articulate them in layman's terms to the people that you're calling on.
Yeah.
Right.
I think it's really cool being able to like show them physically, hey, here's what we did. Here's how we got there. Magic is awesome software. I think, at the end of the day, that's something the agency is probably going to utilize probably in 2021. But it's been a really big game changer for us with some of these middle market, because they understand that we know more than their current broker. No one's ever shown them exactly how the process works and how they get to the premium that they're paying and why they're overcharged.
Yeah, it's I talk about this too all the time. They've made it too easy to do mod audits, right, with the software to a certain degree. Because if you give an agent the ability to take a shortcut, most of the time they're going to take the shortcut, right? So when these companies that put this software out have made it to where you can scan your worksheet in, and it's going to ultimately give you the It's going to give you the reporting. They think that's great. We will beat them every time at the point of sale because they've done nothing at all to validate that the mod is even correct. Yeah. You're operating off of the assumption that the mod worksheet is accurate, and that's not always the case. In fact, many times it's not the case. So we like to enter everything manually. So while we don't necessarily do it in a spreadsheet or in some sort of formulas that we've created ourselves, we still take the long route to enter that in. And, some of what I do is antiquated and old school, but this is what I can promise you. If I'm sitting down and entering claims in directly from loss runs, there's a 100% chance I'm going to pick up on trends that I wouldn't pick up on otherwise. I'm not saying you don't have the ability or people don't have the ability to pick up on trends if they do it the other way. I'm just telling you the way I'm wired. I know nothing is going to slip through the cracks if I'm manually going through that process. And it helps me see and understand what's really impacting things and opening the door for a much more focused conversation with people when we go to present. I can't tell you the number. And the other one is, and I know I talk about this all the time, but the other one is grouped losses. I don't use grouped losses when I do a mod analysis. I ungroup them. What are the chances that you're going to see something that's happened multiple times that's been a small grouped loss that is a precursor for what could be a really nasty claim? And if you're only looking at what the ModMaster or the Modric report is going to have you look at by just scanning it in and doing group losses, you could miss something that could potentially save your client from a really nasty injury down the road and subsequently some money. So again, it goes back to just because you can doesn't mean it's the best way to do it, right?
Yeah, I think work comp is one of those lines where you really have to be intimate with it. You've got to have a deeper level of understanding of the the client or the prospect you're working with. So if you're doing that all by hand, I agree. You're picking up different trends in the injuries that you might not see or understand until later down the road when one of those happens. Those bigger injury claims that you could have potentially completely prevented beforehand. And I think, it's also what separates you in a prospecting conversation because you have that deeper level of understanding of that company. Nothing's going to get by you.
Yeah. So I started talking about how we've been flip-flopping back and forth. The first thing I said was the first point of view, and that is I like to get in a month after they renew. The second part of it, though, is if I'm looking at this from a practical and a tactical sales perspective, this is the undisputed truth. Our industry has conditioned buyers that we are going to call them 90 days before renewal.
Yep.
90 days and closer to renewal to get an appointment to bid their insurance. And this is one of those areas where I've basically tried to hold my ground and try and continue to work way out in front. But I've shifted my position a little bit for a couple of reasons. Number one, people are used to getting that phone call at that time. You don't have nearly the resistance 90 days or 60 days before renewal. I'm not advocating that's the best case scenario. I don't want to work under that kind of timeline. But that's what our industry's conditioned people to do. And so that's what they do. And so I'm moving more into, okay, let's go ahead. Let's focus on, the top 20% of the accounts that I'm going after. I really want to get in there a month after renewal because these are going to be a little longer sales cycle. I want to have the ability to ramp up, blah, 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 blah. But I think that if we are able to canvas with an appointment setting firm or an in-house appointment setter or whatever else, if we can canvas that other 80% that's used to getting that call 60 to 90 days before renewal, you can get them to take an appointment. I don't even care if I'm going in under the premise I'm going to bid their insurance, right? I'm not going to bid their insurance. I refuse to bid their insurance. But if they think that's what I'm going to talk to them about, how much more powerful is my argument going to be when they're talking to a total of 3 or 4 agents and everybody else is talking about price, bid, quote, whatever else. And I walk in and say, yeah, we're here to talk about total cost of risk. And we don't bid insurance. That's not how we operate. We don't really think that you're going to get the best result that you could if you have multiple agents in the mix. Here's why. And so our first thing is let's go in with a completely different message yeah, that message sticks a month after renewal. But if that message is what's currently on the table compared to everybody else who does it the way it's always been done, it's also going to be magnified in that part of the process too. That's how I'm viewing it. So I'm looking really forward. We're ramping up our calling efforts for the 1/1 cycle to see how much business we can pick up, doing it more the tradition, calling more around the traditional time, and then hopefully getting some opportunities to go in and do what we do anyhow.
Well, it's more impactful that way, right? I mean, if you're having that conversation with them before their renewal happens versus afterwards, I mean, their renewal's already happened. So even though it may be a fresh take and something that they're not used to hearing, they already just renewed their insurance. So it still may not make, it may not make a difference to them. But if you're having that conversation with them 60, 90, whatever, however many days before, then it's a little bit more time sensitive and it might hit home, in my opinion, a little bit.
I think the tricky part too is having an understanding of who you're talking to before you call them. And that's why I like working with industry vertical professionals who might already know these guys. So I can get a better, deeper understanding of how they operate in their company. If they know them or know someone on the board, I'll call them ahead of time and just be like, hey, I'm talking with, this company, what do you think? And that'll shift my prospecting standpoint from, hey, am I reaching out 90 days before, or am I doing it after the renewal? And, I started that back in probably May of this year. And I picked up a much higher close percentage going in after they've renewed, helping in the audit process, because I'm always finding challenges with that. Otherwise, sometimes their mindset's going to be stuck in that, how many calls down on the agency list are you? Are you the 10th agent to call already? And they're in that bidding and quoting mentality already if you're not the first one. So if you haven't had that conversation, they've heard it 9 or 10 times before, their mind already wants to say no to the most important question.
Right.
Yeah. So we're connected on social media. I get invites to stuff from you all the time. Tell me about some of these other little side hustles or whatever it is you have going on right now.
Yeah. So for me personally, I get a lot of my business on Facebook, on social media, and I'm driving groups and just pushing content out directly to people. And there's a lot of data on social media that a lot of business owners are sharing that you're not going to find anywhere else. So for me, being a part of groups, being a part of, those business owner conversations, even if you're not an active part in it, can help before that prospecting call. And, I've kind of learned that mentality a lot, from my wife. She's a school teacher, but she's a firecracker. She goes after everything and succeeds. So, I've learned a lot of, different processes in the way she thinks and the way she operates that I think comes back to what a lot of business owners are thinking.
Yeah. I think your wife looks like she enjoys a good German beer based on the pictures that I've seen.
Heck yeah.
And B, give me some examples. You said something that resonated. I'm interested in what types of data you're talking about that you can see from business owners on social media that you might not find elsewhere.
Yeah, there's a lot of local resources out there, larger groups on Facebook where business owners share their pain points, their challenges, and are upfront. I see a lot of community crowdfunding in terms of, hey, I'm looking for this. I'm looking for, something that's going to help with my marketing or my operations. And I do a lot of drip campaigns. We just recently got Hubspot, which has been a game changer for me. So I'm looking for more one-on-one, really specific conversations I can have with the business owner based around something that they're already asking right now in that moment.
So talk about HubSpot and being a game changer. We're huge HubSpot users. And we probably, it's crazy, man, because you buy that thing and then the real work starts, right? Like once you have it. So there's just so many things that you can do with it that I'm so glad that we have somebody that's a dedicated resource to do nothing except program HubSpot. Yeah, we have a full-time in-house person that does all of that stuff for us so that we're not having to try and figure out how to be CRM programmers. and everything else. What's the biggest thing that you've gained from having HubSpot? When did you get it, number one, and what's the biggest thing you've gained from it?
So we got it about, I would say 2 months ago. We're fairly recent, but the biggest thing is automation. We've got a 12-month sales process that we go through. And as soon as I onboard a client into it, it starts that campaign. And I can trigger it based off their responses, based off of things that they interact with. I can reshift that. And I think a lot of that it takes time off my plate. But it automates those little conversations before I call them. And it's going to ask.
It goes off their renewal date, I would imagine.
Yeah. I'm always going off their renewal date. And depending on those conversations that I have, I'm either going to shift that to 90 days before or 30 days after their renewal. So I think an important process in that is just that it's ever evolving. No business owner is ever going to be stuck in one section. You're always moving them around, which it's been cool to see.
Are you guys doing sales, service, and marketing with HubSpot or no?
Yeah, we're doing everything from a service standpoint. A lot of that's still in-house. So we're going to be transitioning that down the road once we kind of are able to automate it a little bit more. But the biggest thing is the marketing and sales.
Yeah, it's interesting. What are you guys using for an AMS?
We use, off the top of my head, I'm not sure because I'm not really plugged into that. I'm a producer. I want to say it's AMS 360, but
good for you that you're not plugged into that. I would love to not ever be plugged into an AMS, and I try my best not to. I mean, most of what we do is inside HubSpot anyhow, but unfortunately, not unfortunately, Hawksoft's a great product. I have no complaints about them. It's just producers don't need to be spending time putting crap into computers. That's my thought process, right? So HubSpot is huge, and thankfully we have all three modules. So for us, we do have the ability to create tickets inside the service side and alert the producers with the task to let them know to follow up with the service person. So for me, it's a whole lot better to be able to just sit and look at things in a dashboard and table view, so I can see, oh, there's a bottleneck right there in the process. I probably need to figure out what that is and what's causing that heartburn and all of that kind of stuff. So
yeah, it's been nice not being able to have to rely a lot of my time on using an AMS. And I think HubSpot, I'm still involved in the work comp claims and all the process, so I'm having to actively track all that. But our strongest carriers allow us to automate some of that already from a workers' comp standpoint. So it's fortunate for me in the prospecting point of view that I don't have to deal with all that extra.
Yeah, it's good there. The other place that it's good is when you can put automated onboarding campaigns and things like that in place. One of the biggest complaints that I hear from agencies is that it takes forever for them to teach clients how to do business with them. Okay, well, we solved that problem. They get 5 emails from us in the first 10 days with videos about very specific things that are differentiators in doing business with us versus other people. So we walk them through that process and we educate them. And it's crazy because, something I take responsibility for is not keeping the pedal to the metal as much as I need to on HubSpot, because when we first got it, I was gung-ho about getting all of those campaigns and things done. And now I feel like so many times I get caught up operating the agency that I don't slow down and step back and look and say, you know what, this is something that I could put a workflow around inside HubSpot that would make my life a whole lot easier. What does that look like? Let me map that out and say, okay, here are the triggers and all of the other stuff. So I need to become more committed in my agency for going back and looking at those things just from the operational perspective. I think we've got the sales and the marketing piece down, but it's all of the other stuff that it could do that we're not capturing nearly what we could. I bet you we're not even using 20%, 25% at the most of what HubSpot can do. Mm-hmm. The other part of it is I don't have a blank check, man. I mean, getting somebody to program, it's not cheap. Yeah. And, if you can't go from 0 to 100. So it's really kind of sitting back and making sure that if you are using a consultant, you've got somebody that's familiar with the product and has experience doing it they can see the 10,000 foot overview and say, here's where you want to be in 5 years. Let's back into what you need to do now and come up with a strategy for building that out so that you're where you need to be in 5 years or whatever that number is. That makes way more sense than, just trying to cobble things together. the system's going to do what you tell it to do. So if you're illogical in your approach, then the system's not going to work right. And I think that a lot of agencies, again, it goes back to people complaining about shiny object syndrome and technology and all of that. That's why they want to try and ramp up and do everything so fast. Whereas with something like that, if you do it right the first time, you don't ever have to do it again. So as long as you're paying the money and investing it, pay the money and invest it to do it the right way. Yeah,
we just brought a guy on a couple of days ago that was recommended to us by the Institute of Work Comp Professionals. And we're starting with just workers' comp, but automating that process from the onboarding standpoint to, 90 days from renewal and trying to get them at the end of the day really buy into our process. But it's going to provide value for them, and I'm not even going to have to touch them, not necessarily every month, but, realistically, my entire client retention is going to be based on how I handle those claims and how we, push it to a successful renewal rather than dealing with the nitty gritty kind of details that I shouldn't.
Yeah. Yep. Absolutely. Well, listen, man, we have been going we went way past an hour. We could probably talk for another hour easily. I know people are going to want to reach out to you. How can they find you? Yeah, I'm on LinkedIn, Harrison Wicker, and, Facebook, connect with me there. I'm big on social media. I know InsurTech scene is pretty big on Twitter. I follow that a lot, but not super active on that. So LinkedIn and Facebook are probably my two go-tos. Yeah, I never could get into Twitter. I'm not really sure what the deal is with that, but it just wasn't my cup of tea. Yeah, I get plugged into cool conversations, but it's just too difficult to stay active on it. It's one more thing to manage, man. Raphael's the freaking Twitter king. That guy loves Twitter.
Is he really? That's random to me.
Yeah, no, he loves Twitter. I think that he probably talks to his wife on it. He probably doesn't.
I never would have guessed that, seeing the way that dude types.
Well, he's got thumbs, right? So he can do that. But I get notifications all the time that says Raph liked this, Raph retweeted, whatever. Yeah, it is. It's kind of like an anomaly. So
that's bizarre.
Well, listen, Harrison, thanks so much for coming on, man. I appreciate you being patient. We were a little slow in getting started. Good info. Definitely will have you back at some point to hear how things are going. But again, just really appreciate you being on, man. I hope you have a great week. Yeah, this was fun. Thanks for letting me kick it with you guys. All right, brother. Take care, man.
See you.
Yeah, see you.
You've been listening to the Power Producers Podcast. You can follow Killing Commercial Insurance on Facebook and YouTube. And if you want to take your game to the next level, check out our book, The Extra 2 Minutes, and our website, killingcommercial.com.